And now I'd like to introduce today's special guest. Marshall McLuhan once called advertising the greatest art form of the 20th century. It used to be that advertising was taken for granted, but not anymore. I suspect that those of you who watched the recent Super Bowl will have noted that the television announcers repeatedly told the audience that if they wanted to watch all the commercials, they could do so online. These commercials were deemed to be so interesting and entertaining that people would take the time after the game to watch them again or to view those that they missed during the broadcast. This gives you a sense of how pervasive advertising and marketing has become, when the commercials are spoken about almost as much as the major sporting event they appear in. This is what marketing executives dream of. But does it result in increased business? Our guest speaker today, Arlene Dickinson, would say that marketing should deliver business results. She believes in marketing as an essential driver for businesses, particularly in uncertain economic times. 6 years ago, Arlene began turning venture from a traditional advertising firm to one that, on behalf of its clients, approaches marketing not as a cost, but as an investment. She believes marketing should speak the language of business and be accountable to delivering on business goals. Her company's unique planning process ensures marketing has a clear line of sight to business objectives and is accountable to delivering on them. In other words, Arlene Dickinson treats marketing and advertising as an art form that makes a constructive contribution to a company's bottom line. Arlene is a 20-year veteran of Canada's marketing industry. She has built Venture Communications into one of this country's largest and most successful independent marketing firms, now with offices in 3 Canadian cities. More recently, she's recognizable as one of the dragons on CBC's reality show, Dragon's Den, a show in which Canadians from coast to coast pitch business ideas to so-called dragons in hopes that they will invest their own funds in these entrepreneurial ideas. Arlene's growing fame builds on her years of hard work, including recognition by Profit and Chartland magazines as one of Canada's top 100 women business owners, and a Pinnacle Award for Entrepreneurial Excellence. In addition, Venture was named as one of Canada's 50 best managed companies for 3 years in a row. So, as I now turn things over to Canadian Club Vice President and BNN TV anchor, Amanda Lang, please join me in welcoming the CEO of Venture Communications and one of this nation's leading marketing gurus, Arlene Dickinson.
Thank you so much for that, Noella. And thank you all for being here. I'm excited to talk to Arlene. And some of you will know we've done this before. We're quite serious about your questions. The most interesting aspect of this is what you want to hear from Arlene. This is a conversation, and I'm thrilled to lead it. But we do want to hear from you in the room and any questions you have for Arlene. And I guess I want to start by setting the table a little bit, talking about what we're talking about. I know there are some marketing experts here, but not all of us are. And some of us get confused. Is it marketing? Is it advertising? Is it branding? A new term that I'm not even sure what that is. Why don't we start with, when you talk about the strategic importance of marketing, is it one of those things? Is it all of those things? What do we mean?
Marketing is, it used to be that marketing was all about advertising, and advertising was about place and price and product and those, the 5 Ps that we all learned when we were talking about what we needed to do with our advertising dollars. And marketing now is all about everything we do in terms of what the consumer insight is. So it's much more about understanding what the consumer is doing and where to talk to them and how to talk to them, and getting inside their heads instead of in terms of just thinking about pushing messages out, understanding our consumers. So it's all of those things. It's advertising, it's branding, it's everything to do with reaching out, talking to our customers.
A lot of us, of course, have seen you recently as one of the dragons on Dragon's Den.
Yes.
And I'm curious to know, when you see a business idea, a concept, and some of them are pretty rough, when you see them, does your expertise in marketing help you see them differently? Do you look at them and see what they could become with the aid of the right marketing?
Absolutely. I think some of the biggest challenges I've had on the show itself is talking to the other dragons about what I think they're missing. I think what happens on the set is that I do look at the ideas and think about how marketing could drive those ideas forward, and I do think about them differently. And so we often argue about some of the things that they're seeing and the dollars and cents, and they're not seeing what I see as the market opportunity. So it's actually quite interesting.
Let's talk about some of the old stereotypes. There's this great Joe Wanamaker quote. I know that half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. I just don't know which half.
Right.
I think probably a lot of people feel that way about marketing, that they sort of throw the spaghetti at the wall and they assume some of it's going to stick. Is there a way to know better what's going to work in advance?
Absolutely. People who are sitting there wondering, and senior executives who are wondering whether or not their dollars are being wisely invested right now, and if they can't answer that, if they can't come up with a real foundational answer to what their business strategy is and how marketing lines up with it, I tell them that they need to take a good, long, hard look at their marketing areas and make sure that they change them and think about strategy driving results. So marketers who are wondering whether or not they're doing what they need to be doing don't have the right strategy in place and haven't spent the time up front really doing the heavy lifting around developing and designing strategy that's actually going to drive business results. So that's a big problem.
All right, and I want to go through some themes, and just so everybody is aware, as a journalist, I do rip off people's ideas professionally. That's what I do for a living. What you're hearing here are Arlene's own thoughts, including that Wanamaker quote. So don't think that I'm coming up with any of this. But you talk about the need for discipline and accountability in marketing. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think marketing used to be considered, people used to look at a creative idea and go, that's the answer. If we just do a great creative idea, if we have the best creative and we win awards, that's actually going to drive our marketing and our business. And marketing is a discipline. So what it requires is a seat at the senior executive table. It needs to bring research forward. It needs to bring market insight forward. It needs to contribute to business strategy. There is a discipline to it. There is hard work attached to it. This is not a discipline that everybody can do. Unfortunately, the industry allows almost anybody into it. And so what you need to do is make sure that you are engaging with experts who understand the strategy side of it, how to understand business, how your marketing strategy is going to drive your business, and spend the time investing in planning up front. That old adage of measure twice, cut once is never more true than it is in marketing. And I have another favorite saying that I use often when clients say, well, we want to get from here to here, but let's just try a few things and see how that works. And my favorite quote is, it's an old Chinese proverb that says, you can't take 2 leaps to cross a chasm. And it's a great quote because it creates a mental image of you can run as hard as you want, but if you're not ready to take that leap, you will in fact fail if you aren't prepared for how far you have to jump.
One of the things that happens with marketing, and you refer to this, there's a lack of accountability, a lack of discipline. It's kind of a ghetto. When you think of a corporation, big or small, it is not central to what the corporation is doing. What needs to change about that?
Well, I would tell anybody at a senior executive level who doesn't look around the executive table and see somebody from marketing sitting there that they have immediately an issue in terms of developing their business strategy. As you're designing business strategy, if you're not getting provided insights and input from the market and understanding your consumer and understanding your customer and understanding all of the different research and analytics and data that's available to you in the context of a business strategy, you are going to create a business strategy that does not have its best chance to success.
Having said that,
yep.
Easier said than done in a sense, because let's take it in pieces. In a small company, the marketing vision may be part of the executive team in the sense that the CEO or the owner may have a strong idea of what it means. Executing it in a way that delivers results is not always easy. You may have an idea of what's going to work. Yeah. How do you either work with outside people or even internally know in advance how you can measure the return? Does it have to drive sales, for instance? Does it have to have actual benchmarkable measurables?
If you're creating a marketing strategy that's not lined up to the business goals and objectives, then you run the risk of not being able to measure. And I think that as long as your strategy in marketing has a clear line of sight from what marketing's doing to what the business needs it to do, you will be able to put measurements in place. There are a lot of marketing metrics out there that help make sure that what you're doing is accountable to the business. But there is not the same ROI in marketing as there is in other business endeavors. But there is a real challenge for marketing experts and marketing members of the organization to speak the language of business. So what they tend to do is, you'll see the actual trend right now and over the last few years is that marketing executives change jobs every 18 to 24 months. And the reason they change jobs is because what they've done is they've simply built a resume for themselves. They've spent some time doing great creative work. They've spent some time supporting sales. But they really don't have a mandate from the business itself, so they don't have any ability to understand what they're supposed to be doing. And as a result, 18 to 24 months into it, they get tired of trying to show their influence in the business and they quit. We did some work with Unisys globally many years ago where we helped them with marketing accountability. And one of the senior executives, the senior CMO, was in front of her group of peers, and they were questions from the audience, and one of her peers said, you know, aren't you a little worried about being accountable to the business and saying that you're going to deliver certain things and certain metrics? And her answer was really resonated with me and it stayed with me for a number of years, which was, I would far rather be accountable to the business than invisible to it. And most marketers end up being invisible to the business because they can't talk the language that the business needs them to talk.
What do you do if you're a marketer and you don't have executive level support? How do you get a seat at the table if the CEO doesn't understand or doesn't believe in the value of what you do?
Well, it's a great question, and I don't really have an answer to it other than to say that the best advice I would give that marketer is to go and have a great straight-ahead conversation with your CEO and talk about the value you can contribute and tell them that you can be as accountable as every other business unit can be to his business. Demand the seat.
Or quit.
Or quit. Be one of those 18 to 24 months.
That brings me to the big company problem, because a lot of big companies, and we talked a little bit about this at lunch, believe in this. They spend a lot of money on research, they spend a lot of money on consultants, but actually turning ideas and talk and jargon into something meaningful inside a big organization seems to be a difficult proposition. Very few of them really seem to know how to do it well. How do you solve that problem?
If the question is whether or not, once you have the plan, whether or not you're able to execute on the plan. If you have the right plan and the metrics are in place and you understand what you're supposed to be doing, you should be going back on a regular basis to determine how you've done. So setting in benchmarks, research benchmarks to understand where you are today, moving those levers and turning those dials up and seeing how that's doing, reporting back on how that's going. Another favorite line I have that one of our senior planners uses is that marketers should be more willing to put a stake in the ground and reserve the right to get smarter. So it's fine to say, this is what we're going to do and this is what I think it should deliver to you. And when that doesn't work, then you say, there's learning from this, let's learn from it and move forward. What generally happens, though, is when they execute poorly, is they stop. It didn't work, so it failed, so let's just quit doing this and let's just start all over again. And then you reinvent yourself on a regular basis and you don't end up learning anything as an organization, or you execute poorly.
What are some of the best ways? I mean, obviously marketing can drive sales. There are many other, I remember years and years ago, long before the words corporate reputation became part of the lexicon, seeing a television ad in primetime in New York for Cisco. And I remember, I was a business journalist at the time, and I remember thinking, why the hell is a network company that sells to, this chief information officer advertising during Seinfeld? Well, of course, now I know that they were just ahead of themselves, and they understood about reputation and goodwill. And how do you measure that? Do you have to do expensive surveys of people to understand how well it's working?
You definitely need research to enable good marketing strategy. Research is foundational in terms of understanding where you are. So you can't talk about success unless you understand where you've come from and where you want to get to. So research is critical to success, yes.
Question from the room about breaking down silos, because in companies there's often a marketing department and there's often a PR department. How do you get them to talk to each other and work together better?
Well, this may not be a popular answer, but I would suggest that marketing strategy, as it relates to the business strategy, should inform the public relations strategy. So PR, there has many components, but one cannot drive the other. Marketing strategy encompasses public relations work. Marketing is not about just paid-for advertising. Marketing is about all of the different disciplines of communication, and they should be working hand in glove. They should absolutely be lined up together, informing each other of what their issues are and what's going on.
Okay, but let's be practical. Who's in charge?
Marketing.
Just checking.
And all you PR people out there, we'll talk later.
How do you most effectively measure the value of mass marketing? Not brand recognition necessarily, but is there a way to, and I guess I don't know if this means sort of...
Metrics?
Yeah.
There are hundreds of different metrics out there for measuring the effectiveness of marketing. Some of them are traditional ROI values. Some of them are what I call VOI, value on investment, in terms of moving the needle around brand attributes. Do they like you? Do they believe you? Do they understand you? But you need to actually do some research on the metrics that are going to be most easily available to you for the efforts that you're going to put into your marketing plan.
This is a great question, and one that must come up for people that work with clients and have to go in and try to educate them about their needs. Because again, and as the economy slows down, it's got to be one of the first places people cut.
Right.
How do you educate the CEO or the owner or entrepreneur that this is an important area that is worth spending money on?
Well, there is a lot of empirical data out there for those of you who are talking to your clients and want some information about how to help them understand the value of marketing. There's study after study done by institute after institute that talks about what happens during a recession, for example. What happens to the marketers that invest more, that stay the course, that actually overinvest past their competitors. And the fact of the matter is that the people that do that not only succeed better during the period of the recessionary period, but after the recessionary period, they continue to do better than their competitors and outpace their competitors. This is not, this is, as I said, there's a lot of data on this. This isn't just something I'm making up on the fly. This is actual evidence to the fact that marketing does drive business strategy over the long term and growth.
Do you need a strong brand in order to have a strong marketing strategy? Does one come before the other?
Well, I always say the brand is the business. So when you asked, you said earlier, I'm not sure what the brand is. To me, the brand is the business. Think about branding as it's your company is seen through the eyes of your customer. It's just that simple. So marketing is actually the way to help change or shape the way your customer sees you.
So a challenge there. There's some studies that I've seen that are quite interesting. That the stronger the brand, the more consistent its message has been. What does Volvo say to you? If anybody in the room doesn't think safety, then, you're kind of crazy, apparently. The problem is that our marketing strategies change all the time. Right. So how do we change them with the need for freshness and new ideas and reinvigoration and still stay true to a consistent message?
Well, your marketing strategy has got to be lined up with what the business is trying to do. So, and the business doesn't change its vision on an annual basis. So, you need to be making sure that your business is clearly stated as to what it's trying to do and how marketing is going to drive that. Marketing strategies from a tactical perspective do change regularly. Marketing strategies from how they line up to business shouldn't be changing on a regular basis just because you feel like changing your strategy. Your strategy's got to be lined up to what the business is trying to do.
This one is maybe a little technical. It's somebody in the industry, I think. But is there sometimes a conflict between building a brand and your retail pricing?
Sure. There's anytime you can't control sales, marketers put up their hands and say, well, we had a great plan and we had a great creative campaign and it would have done really well if they had just executed it better. And we blame our clients because they either changed the price or they did something. And the fact is that there is no perfect world as it relates to that. And what you need to do as marketers is we need to understand the operational constraints of our clients. We need to understand them up front. And once we understand the values and the issues they have relative to operations, maybe they have to cost cut because their competitors are cost cutting. Maybe they have to do something differently because their sales are slipping. Maybe they have to do something because their investors are demanding it. The more we understand that at the business level, the better we're able to create a marketing strategy that helps solve that problem instead of blaming them for their issues and wondering why it didn't help our marketing efforts.
One of the other things that I found interesting in sort of previous interviews about branding and marketing is that your brand isn't what you think of yourself. It's what everybody else thinks of you.
That's right.
And there's an element of a lack of control over that. Do you find it's difficult sometimes that when people have an idea of themselves and a marketing plan that follows and it actually is not in keeping with their brand?
Yes, there's lots of people that you might talk to who think they know their brand better than anybody and don't want to really understand and listen to what research is telling them, and who dismiss research, and they'll say, well, the research is flawed. There's no way that people believe that. Or I just can't understand how people are thinking that way. And, you know, what you have to do, again, is make sure that you're well armed with the right arsenal of information to support your information, to make sure that they understand what your conclusions are and why you believe that they really do have an issue.
Which maybe is easier if you've managed to persuade them that this is an investment, not an expense. How do we do that?
By proving value, by showing that everything you're doing is lining up with what they care about, by talking to them in the same language that they speak in every day, by talking about business information as opposed to marketing. Well, there's all sorts of, you know, we are really guilty in the marketing industry of all these buzzwords and these words that we come up with that actually everybody kind of shakes their head at and goes, oh yeah, or nods their head and goes, yeah, I understand what that means. And meanwhile, the CEO is going, what the heck was that about? And, you know, really, you're thinking, great, they understand this and they bought into it, but they have no idea because we speak a different language. And what we have to do is speak their language and help them understand what marketing's doing for them.
So how close do you have to be to a business in order to help create a good marketing plan for it?
You have to be intimate with a business. You have to understand it from operations through to sales, through to manufacturing side of it, to whatever the different elements are the business are that you're dealing with. You cannot possibly tell them that you're going to line up your marketing strategy to your business if you don't have an intimate knowledge of your customer's business. You can't.
Question for the students in the room, why should they consider a career in advertising? And I guess we should say, should they consider a career in advertising? And if so, why?
I think marketing is going to be an amazing place to be in the next decade. Advertising, you know, is one component of it, and so considering a career in advertising, I would say to you, you know, you might want to think a little bit broader than that because advertising is changing, and marketing is really going to control, just like when I talk about PR, marketing really manages advertising. Advertising is one tool. So I would say absolutely. Think about everything that's going on. Think about all the information people are getting, how distrustful we are of information. Why? Because it's so readily available to us and there's so much of it. And so the ability to help people, and that's why people are going to social networks and talking to their peers to get information on companies nowadays, because they trust their peers. They don't necessarily trust all the information. So marketing is going to evolve significantly. And I would say to all of you, absolutely. When you graduate, give us a shout. We're always looking for good students.
Could you see the marketing role as a path to the CEO's office in future? Traditionally, it hasn't been. Will that change?
Yes. Well, I think some of the, you know, I always hear examples of great corporations use, I want to be just like, and I won't talk about them, but there's a lot of consumer packaged goods organizations that people will refer to and say, I would like to be just like that company. And most of those companies are led by somebody who is either been in marketing at some point in their career, absolutely understands what branding's about, and understand that what they are is in the marketing business, not in the business of potentially creating soft drinks or tennis shoes or whatever it is that their actual product is. They're in the business of marketing, and they understand that, and they understand how to make that happen at a senior executive level.
Can you think of good examples? There's some transformational shifts. I mean, one example that I would think of would be the need to address climate change, and then you think if you're an oil company, or if you're a mining company, your shift has to be around how you market yourself in this new. How do you maintain the consistency of what you do and who you are while undergoing a kind of a transformational shift like that?
Well, the the trend today in business is triple bottom line. You know, we talk, organizations are becoming much more in tune with being environmentally conscious, socially conscious, and profitable. And you can do all three of those things. And so as, you know, if you're an oil and gas company and you're thinking about how to go to market, you need to understand that there's a different expectation from consumers about their responsibility to the environment and to charities and to causes in the world, and that it's okay that they make money. They just need to also understand how they can also do other things that the consumers expect them to do given the volume of profit they're making.
So one example that I would think of is BP as trying to rebrand as Beyond Petroleum, which in some ways is brilliant, except if you care deeply about how much dollar of profit they make per barrel of oil, which if you're a shareholder is pretty much all you care about. Do they risk disenfranchising some constituents as they try to please others? I
don't think so because of what I've just said. I think if they do a good enough job of acknowledging that they are in business to make money, that they are also in business to help the environment, and that they understand that what they do has impact on the environment, and that they are trying to make sure that their impact is marginalized, that they care about social impact, that they give back to the community, then I think people will have a better sense of that organization. I think their strategy is very good. I think it's very strong, and I think they are doing a very good job of coming to market with it.
You touched on this a little bit, but it's, I think, a good point. A question from the room. People are so saturated with communications everywhere, every day. How does it affect marketing? And importantly, how do you overcome that saturation with your message?
Well, there's a whole trend that's going to happen about permission-based marketing where people want to hear from you in a relevant place when they want to hear from you, not simply because you want to talk to them. So, you know, we're inundated with 3,000 messages a day. The only ones that I'm going to retain are the ones that are relevant to me at the time that I'm looking for something or happen to be in the market for something, and that message reaches to me. So when you're on sites, and there are some pretty big social network sites right now that have just gone through this where they've tried to advertise and put their ads in people's face, and consumers are kind of, there's a big backlash saying, you know what, I'm not here to hear your advertising. I'm here to talk to my friends, and I will let you know when I want to talk to you. And consumers are starting to get a much deeper understanding of the value of their own information. And they're holding on to that, and they're willing to talk to you as an advertiser, but on their terms. So the power has shifted dramatically.
Question, do you have marketing-related insights for Canadian charity organizations? Anything different about being a nonprofit, not-for-profit?
I think, you know, again, if we go back to the triple bottom line change that's going on in the world, and particularly in North America, I would say there's a big opportunity for charities to understand what corporations need in their language, create a way to speak to them that speaks to their needs they have as opposed to the needs you have as a not-for-profit, and help them realize on the goals that they have in terms of giving back to the community as opposed to forcing your needs on them. And if you just turn it around and think about it from who you're asking money from, then you will be able to talk to them differently. And I think you'll have actually good success because corporations are actually looking now for causes that are much more meaningful and ingrained into the organization as opposed to just, we're going to give a donation and we'll talk to you later.
It becomes part of their own
strategy.
So you need a strategy that speaks to
their strategy,
their internal marketing strategy.
That's right.
It's getting harder, not easier.
Yes,
that's what you're saying.
That's right.
One of our students wants to know what influenced you to choose the career you did.
4 children, no money. Necessity was the mother of invention for me. I honestly, you know, I fell into this business. I was very fortunate to find a career that I enjoyed and that I had an aptitude for 25 years ago. But I simply worked because I was a single mom with 4 kids and had to find something that I could do, and I fell into this job. So, you know, I'd love to tell you all that I had an epiphany one night and I woke up and said, I will be a marketer. But in fact, it was simply because I needed to and got into it. But then once I was into it, I was absolutely hooked. I love the business, love the industry.
You've shown, I mean, most recently, of course, as a television personality, that there are multiple things that you can do, that you've got a skill set. Have there been other, in a parallel life, other careers that you might have chosen if you could have done it over again? I always wanted to be a famous actress, but that didn't happen. So
No, I have absolutely no regrets about my career. I don't sit there and think, gee, I wish I'd spent some time doing X or Y. I just feel very fortunate that in my industry in particular, and marketers, any of you who are marketers in the room will appreciate this, you get to be in a different business every day. Your clients are in a variety of industry. You get to talk to them and learn about their business and really engage with them. And that's just, it's fascinating. And they invite you into their world, and you get, they trust you with, anywhere from tens of thousands of dollars to multi-millions of dollars. And that trust and that inherent need that they have that you can fulfill is extremely rewarding. When you can do something that actually drives their business, it's nothing beats that. So I love my career. I'm feeling really blessed.
Has anything ever failed? Have you ever let a client down?
Well, I would say sure, yes. Never intentionally, and I think if we let them down, it was because of our poor communication in terms of setting up expectations, and that's actually what led me to change the organization a few years ago, which was, you really need to stand behind what you deliver. And I always say it's just like anything, I never set out to intentionally hurt a person, but sometimes you misintentionally can hurt somebody without meaning to, and I think that's the same in marketing. If you aren't really good at communicating, you can set up expectations that you don't deliver on. I'd like to think that that's very rare, though.
You wouldn't be as successful as you are if it wasn't. Companies, you didn't want to name names before, but somebody in the room wants you to name names. Companies you view as the leading innovators in marketing, and how are they innovative? What are the names that jump out for you?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I think that the Mac IBM ads that are on air right now have done an amazing job of personifying a product in a way that was relevant to the people that it spoke to. Everybody could relate to every Mac user thought they were the Mac guy, and every I don't know if every DOS base thought they were the IBM guy, although they're not called that. But I thought it was quite brilliant in how relevant it was and how it talked about products. But there are some things going on online in terms of some of the sites that are happening out there. There's some websites that I'm a big fan of, and on the spot I'm not going to be able to come up with any of them right this second, but there are a lot of different things going on that are really interesting. Certainly the Macintosh ads are the ones that I kind of think about when I think about all the things they've done to try and build that brand in a time when they were it's really competitive. I think they've done a great job.
That's an example. I mean, there's some amazing advertising, right, as well as branding marketing. Right. How soon would it fail if they didn't back it up with a product that people actually liked?
Really soon.
There's no kind of grace period in that.
The best marketing in the world cannot hide a bad product. And, I've had to sit across from a lot of clients in my career where they come up with a great idea and they say, we've got the better mousetrap and, we're prepared to throw a lot of money at this and we need to do that. And you go to the focus groups or you talk to people and you find out, in fact, they don't really have a better product. They just have another idea that isn't going to do so well. And I have another saying, which is a bad idea is doomed to fail. And I say that to clients like that, where I say, you can throw all the money in the world against this, but your idea foundationally is bad. You have a bad business strategy. We need to rethink that before we start throwing money at it.
Which I guess comes full circle to your point that the strategy, the core of the business, is driven by the marketing. If you can't sell it to people, it's because it's not good. Can you reverse engineer these things?
It's pretty tough. It's pretty tough.
It's better to start with a good product.
Start with a good product. Start with a good service. Start with a good value proposition. There is nothing that's been successful that I can name that started off as a bad product that's done incredibly well.
Going back to some of the things you will have seen on Dragon's Den, all these great ideas from these entrepreneurs, not all of them are out of the ballpark. Have you seen some they're okay ideas, but that with the right marketing strategy might actually really succeed?
Maybe some short-term success could come out of that, but again, if they're not a great idea to begin with, great marketing is like putting lipstick on a pig. What do they say? It's going to, or teaching a pig to sing. It'll frustrate the pig and frustrate you at the same time. So it's you can try, but I don't think it's going to work.
All right. A question here about how companies incorporate new marketing tools and what role new technology plays in reading new audiences. And I guess that comes back to some of these interactive networking sites. I mean, when we think about what Google is capable of doing, what kind of tools do you have at your disposal now to really understand how things are working?
Oh, there is a wealth of information out there. Any of you who know anything about competitive intelligence, not from the viewpoint of finding out bad things about your competitors, but from the viewpoint of understanding what's going on with your competitor sites and with their views and what's happening with their products, will understand that there's a plethora of different places you can go now for online understanding. You need to be up to speed on that, and I would suggest that most organizations that get that are putting somebody in charge of just that area, which is ongoing looking at and understanding and analyzing not only your information, but your competitors' information as well.
All right, I'm being told that we're just about out of time. I'm going to ask one more, and that is when we face a downturn, when money is starting to dry up and people are looking for places to cut, this is an obvious. How do you convince clients, CEOs, even internally, if that's your message, that this is actually the time to spend on this very subject?
Well, if you've done a good job up front of convincing them that your marketing strategy is going to drive business goals, and if you have them buying in and they co-share the strategy with you, they are not going to cut your budget. They are going to understand the value of what marketing is going to deliver for them. If you are starting in a place where it's a recessionary period and they're saying, well, we're going to cut money, you're in a far different place of having to convince somebody that they need to now invest even more because they haven't got a great foundational strategy to start with. It's really up to you as the expert to take that information forward and give them the tools that they need so they can make an informed decision, as opposed to a knee-jerk decision that says, let's just cut marketing because I don't get it. Doesn't deliver any value. It's a clear place we should cut, which is just a misinformed decision.
Arlene, one of the reasons I love my job is I get to talk to people like you and learn something new.
Thank
and
you.
I certainly did today. I appreciate your time. And thanks to all of you for your great questions.
Thanks, Amanda. Thank you. And my pleasure.
Well, thank you, Amanda, for conducting such an engaging and informative interview. And thank you, of course, to Arlene Dickinson for giving us a glimpse behind the curtain into the world of advertising and marketing. The strategy of a synchronized approach to marketing makes a lot of sense, and clients no doubt appreciate a marketing company that can execute that flawlessly while also ensuring full accountability to its values. Marketing is a necessary part of business, and there's very little that we buy or sell that is not marketed in one way or another. For better or worse, marketing is part of life. That's why it was so refreshing and inspiring to hear someone speak so knowledgeably and passionately about doing marketing right. On behalf of the Canadian Club of Toronto, I'd like to thank Arlene Dickinson for taking us down her yellow brick road of insight into how marketing, when done well, can make Kansas anyone's place of Oz. Thank you, Arlene.